Hello, this is Pastor Steve in Visalia, California on a beautiful spring day. Today is June 10th, 2021. I hope it's a lovely day wherever you are, and if it's not a lovely day outside, I hope it's a lovely day inside. Today we're going to start a series that I am entitling, What? Because that's the question I have asked over and over again in the last, let's say, 10 to 15 years, but most especially in the last few years, when I hear things on the news or I see things in theological debate circles, what's going on in the church, what's going on in the world, I frequently find myself thinking, how in the world can you even believe that or think that? How did things change so drastically? So here's the deal with that. We're awash with folks who immediately rush to say, well, anything that's new is different. Anything that disagrees with what I've always believed is necessarily wrong. And everybody on both sides loves to call names and fight and mischaracterize, etc. None of that's graceful. And in our ministry here in Visalia at the Methodist Church, we strive above all to try to be graceful. So I thought it would be good for me and certainly good for the laity of this church, and I hope for anybody else who watches it, to simmer down a little bit and to try to be graceful and intelligent and fair-minded in addressing some of the shifts in our society and in our world and in our church that we're seeing. And to be graceful when there is at least what seems to be immediate contention and difference of opinion means not to be in too big of a rush to give your own point of view or to say why you're right and the other side is wrong, but to try to listen intelligently and fairly and gracefully to what other people are saying and to discern why, assuming that they're good people, and you should assume that, they would think that way or they would say that way. Say those kind of things. So this is just the introduction, and each week we'll pick a different kind of insight into what people are thinking when they bring about really different perspectives that threaten to change or sometimes do, in fact, just change our reality. I want to start today, and I'll go ahead and dive in now at what I consider to be the basis for much of the social change and upheaval that we are seeing. And this is not a new thought, really very little under the sun is new, but it is a revived thought. And it's a pretty simple and true observation. So people who are advocating for major societal change, for change in the structure and the conduct of religious circles, people who are ready to throw God out, do all manner of things, the folks who lead the Black Lives Matter group, and don't dismiss them. We'll get to that subject later. There's a lot of very intelligent and truthful things coming out of the Black Lives Matter. That ilk of thought, that way of seeing things in a much different way than they've been seen before, and the force and the fury behind it, they're driven by philosophical beliefs. And the one I want to talk about today, and I'm going to try to keep this relatively short, is called constructionism, or they are constructivists. And here is a kind of a bedrock understanding of life that gives rise to many of the changes that are being proposed. Constructivists teach us, and they're right in this, that there are a lot of what is accepted as absolutely provable scientific truth is not at all that. Many of the social constructs of people in groups, whether those groups are a local church or a denomination or even a nation or on the international stage, all humans together, many of the things that we assume are provable truths are not. They're constructs that the majority of people, if not all the people, have agreed to. A simple one would be that most people in the United States in the present day agree that you should not lie to someone in order to take advantage of them, especially monetary advantage. It's wrong. There's no reason really to say that if you unpack it, because there is no objective scientific proof that lying to people to take advantage of them is wrong. It is just something that we have all agreed to. In the same way, you might say, well, it's wrong not to stand up and put your hand over your heart when the Star Spangled Banner, when the national anthem is playing. Again, that might be the truth that you have accepted, but there's no certifiable or guaranteed way to prove that it is a universal truth that everyone should do or must do because it's a truth. It's a construction agreed upon by the major players in a society, again, in a church, even in your family. Most of us experienced when we were young and started to play at friends' house that families have very different constructs of what is right and what is wrong at the dinner table, or in the way that you play, or even in the way that you disagree. Doesn't make one right and the other one wrong. They're just different truths, constructed truths that people abide by. This will have a lot of application as we go through this series entitled What? And it's important to understand that the philosophers are, in fact, right. In a pure philosophical sense, there is very little provable truth in the world. I suppose the fact that the world exists and that we exist in the void called space are provable truths. And after that, even with scientific evidence, there's very little that can be demonstrated to be absolute, irreducible truth that everyone must agree to. And if you start your building a worldview and an understanding of what is right and wrong and good and bad by finding a way to dismiss all of the accepted truth in a society, then there's a good chance you're going to end up with some new proposals for truth, with some new ideas that are absolutely contrary to what have been accepted before. The rationale, and it's important to understand that, is that the only thing that's being done when people are presenting really radically different ideas of right and wrong, good and bad, whose fault it was, all those things, is that there was never any truth anyway. No certifiable truth. And all they're doing is engaging in a process in which they are trying to convince the greater whole of society or the church or whoever you might be talking about that there are alternate ideas that are every bit as valid as the ideas that everybody has allowed to be constructed before. It's a little complex, and I may not be doing the best job in the world of explaining it, but they just look at the final point of all arguments, right? Is it true or is it not? And they effectively say there is no truth, right? Oddly, what they say is the truth is there is no truth. Now, that for some that means there is no gods. For some, it means that Scripture isn't true. It comes out in a lot of different ways. But if there is no truth, there's only agreed upon ways of thinking and believing about what's right and wrong, then it's valid to say we're going to change everything that we can possibly change because your definition of truth or your definition of right or wrong, it doesn't prosper us. We're not the ones getting rich. We're not the ones with power. We're the ones that you are using because of your supposed truths to gain those advantages over other people, and we want to see it stop. So that's all I'm going to offer today, just a basic explanation of the core beginning platform from whence all the changes really that are coming about or at least being proposed in our society come. You may immediately think to yourself, I believe in God and therefore I believe in a core truth. Great, that's fine. I do too. But here's the deal. What I've said today is a fair representation of people who are behind or who are the driving force behind a lot of the changes, and they are correct. Oddly, I think that it's true that there is no truth in the way that they say. From there, then we can have an emerging discussion about whether or not the accepted truths that society has agreed on are good or bad and for whom and how. But I agree, there is no absolute verifiable truth. What I believe is that there is a God and that God has made his will known, and that constitutes the basis of truth for me. But you can't prove that. It's a matter of faith. So To start out our series entitled What? The first thing we have to do, I think, to be graceful and to be fair and to be honest as much as we can, is to say we cede the opening point, right? The very basis of the discussion is correct. There is no discernible truth. The caveat, and this will be the final word for today, is that if that is true, that there is no discernible truth, language gets in the way here a little bit, then it's as true for those who are telling us new truths and who are setting new standards of what is right and wrong and cancel culture and those kind of things. It's as true for them also. And if the rules then are nothing can be considered a core truth, you have to look at the effect on people. I am happy to do that. Happy to look at the effect of competing systems and ideas and beliefs on people. And I'll again say up front, many times the established truth and the truth that I come from, which is a biblical Christian truth, many times we end up losing that part of the argument too. So that's a graceful start. I have tried to research and understand what's being said and why it's being said instead of just listening to sound bites. I invite you, if you're watching this, to tune in next week and continue on. It's a process that will build and it will begin to make more sense. Not trying to convince anybody of anything today, except to say, yeah, well, they have a point, right? Philosophically, there is a point to be made that much of the agreed upon truth, which defines right and wrong for most people, is not provable. It's not demonstrable in a scientific way. It wouldn't hold up to that. It is a construct of Western society, and it has been that stream of consciousness and belief and understanding has been poured into by many, many people over a very long time. But that doesn't mean that what we've ended up with is in all ways absolutely good or right or just. Let's start there. I'll see you next week here on Happy Thoughts for part 2 in our series, What? Trying to understand what in the world is going on. I do hope that you'll meditate on these things. Don't fight against it. Don't try to argue against it. Just try to wear it and live with it for a while and see what kind of shape you're in for next week. So hope you have a great weekend, and I hope that you will be in worship this weekend with us or with whatever church or synagogue or whatever you go to. I believe those are important things. God bless. Thank you.